Chapter 6. The Widow and the Wife. When Dorothea had been at Freshitt Hall for a week, Celia told her about the new part of Mr. Casaubon's will. Dorothea blushed deeply, then went pale. The news seemed to make everything different. Her husband had kept secret his true feelings. She had never thought of Will Ladislaw as a possible lover. Now she knew that her husband had thought of him in that light, and she wondered if Will himself had done so. Celia did not notice how much the news had distressed Dorothea. She continued playing with the baby and talking.
I never liked Mr. Casaubon, Dodo, and neither did Sir James. Now that he's gone, you should try to enjoy life more.
Just then Lydgate came in.
How are you, Mrs. Casaubon? You look ill. Has something distressed you?
Celia said.
She wants to go to Lowick to look at her husband's papers. I don't think she should go. Do you?
I think Mrs. Casaubon should do exactly what she wants to do,
replied Lydgate.
Thank you,
said Dorothea.
I get anxious sitting here, doing nothing. There is so much for me to do at Lowick.
Then she began to cry. Before he left Freshitt Hall, Lydgate asked to see Sir James.
Let Mrs. Casaubon do as she likes,
he said.
She needs perfect freedom.
Dorothea went to Lowick and looked through all Mr. Casaubon's papers. When she saw her husband's instructions for the publication of The Key to All Mythologies, she wrote a note to him and locked it in her desk.
I couldn't follow these instructions. Don't you see now that I couldn't submit my soul to yours by working hopelessly at something I don't believe in? Dorothea.
Now there was no living man for Dorothea to pity. Besides, she now knew that Mr. Casaubon had been secretive and suspicious. She wished that she could renounce the property he had left her in his will, but she felt that property was a responsibility that she should not ignore. For 3 months, Dorothea stayed at Freshitt Hall, but made frequent visits to Lowick. During that time, the elections were held. Despite Ladislaw's hard work, Mr. Brooke lost the election. His reputation as a bad landlord had made him many enemies in Middlemarch. He decided to give up politics and sell the newspaper. Shortly after the election, Dorothea moved back to Lowick.
She will get depressed living alone in that miserable house,
said Mrs. Cadwallader.
She really should get married again as soon as possible.
The real reason for Dorothea's return to Lowick was her deep desire to see Will Ladislaw. One morning she was sitting in the drawing-room looking out of the window when Transcript entered and said,
Mr. Ladislaw is here, madam.
Bring him in, please,
said Dorothea. When Will walked into the drawing-room, Dorothea blushed deeply. She felt that this meeting, which she had wanted so much, was too difficult. Both of them were nervous and agitated.
I am leaving Middlemarch,
said Will.
I wanted to say goodbye to you. I hope you don't mind me coming here.
I'm glad you came. Are you leaving Middlemarch immediately?
Very soon. I'm going to study law in London. I like political work and I want to be qualified to do it. Other men have won honourable positions for themselves without the help of family connections and money.
That makes it all the more honourable,
said Dorothea.
My uncle says you speak in public very well, and that you care about justice for everyone. I'm so glad. When we were in Rome, I thought you only cared for poetry and art.
So you think I should go away from here and stay away for years, until I've succeeded in some profession?
She did not answer immediately. She looked out of the window at the roses in the garden. She assumed that Will had heard about Mr. Casaubon's mean action. She thought,
He never felt anything but friendship for me.
Finally she replied,
Yes, I'll be happy to hear that you have found a profession. But you must be patient. It could take a long time.
Her voice trembled a little.
You'll forget about me,
said Will.
No. I'll never forget you,
she said, smiling. Will blushed and leapt up.
Good God,
he cried passionately. He looked almost angry. He wanted to tell her that he loved her, but he could not.
Others will think I want her money,
he said to himself.
I won't let them think that. And I'm afraid of what she might think.
Just then, Sir James arrived.
I must say goodbye, Mrs. Casaubon,
said Will, and bowing to Sir James, he left quickly. Rosamond was expecting a baby. Lydgate was very glad to hear the news, although it meant more expenses. He was finding married life very expensive indeed. Rosamond liked everything to be the best. He told Rosamond that she should stop horse-riding, now that she was expecting a baby, but Rosamond was used to doing what she liked. In June, Lydgate's cousin came to stay with them. Rosamond was very pleased to have a baronet's son as her guest. Captain Lydgate was very attentive to Rosamond, and paid her many compliments. It gave Rosamond great pleasure to be admired by other men, as well as her husband. Fortunately, Tertius was not a jealous husband, and often he left her alone with the captain.
"Why don't you talk to the captain more?"
asked Rosamond one day when they were alone.
"Because, my dear Rosie, the man's a fool,"
replied Lydgate.
"Ask Ladislaw what he thinks of the captain. He's almost stopped visiting us ever since that man came here."
Rosamond thought she knew why Mr. Ladislaw disliked the captain. He was jealous. This thought pleased her very much. One day, the captain asked Rosamond to go riding with him. Rosamond agreed to go. She did not tell her husband, but she enjoyed it so much that she told him afterwards. She said she planned to go again the following day. Lydgate was furious.
"You shouldn't have gone riding, and you won't do it again, Rosie,"
he said firmly. It was a statement, not a question, and therefore required no reply from Rosamond. She was pleased that she had not made a promise. The next day she went out with Captain Lydgate again. Rosamond's horse was frightened by the sound of a falling tree, and she was frightened too. She became ill and lost the baby. In all future conversations on the subject, Rosamond was certain that horse-riding had made no difference.
"If I'd stayed at home, I would have lost the baby anyway,"
she said.
"Poor darling,"
said Lydgate. But he was amazed at the terrible tenacity of this delicate creature. He felt he had no power over her. Affection did not make her obedient. She did whatever she liked. Soon Rosamond was in good health again, and looking as lovely as ever. Lydgate stopped worrying about her, and returned to other worries. He was very deeply in debt. He could not ask his father-in-law for help. Mr. Vincey had money troubles of his own. Lydgate decided to tell Rosamond about their debts. It was clear to him that they had to live more modestly from now on. Rosamond liked to give parties, and everything she bought was of the very best. He had to explain to her that they must economize. One evening, Lydgate said,
"Rosie, I've something unpleasant to tell you. We're in debt. If we don't live more modestly, we'll get more and more into debt as time goes on."
Rosamond was silent for a few moments. Finally, she looked at him and replied,
"What can I do, Tertius?"
For a moment, Lydgate remembered when Dorothea, speaking of her sick husband, had used almost the same words, but with such a very different meaning.
Help me. Tell me what I can do. He's been working all his life. He cares about nothing else. And I care about nothing else.
Lydgate felt sad. Rosamond's reply had sounded so distant, so indifferent. But she was not indifferent. She'd spent her life dreaming of beautiful things. The idea that she could not have the things she wanted shocked and distressed her. Tears came into her eyes.
"I'm sorry, Rosie. It's all my fault,"
said Lydgate.
"We must leave Middlemarch,"
said Rosamond.
"Let's go to London."
"We can go nowhere without money,"
Lydgate replied.
"Your uncle will help us."
"No, Rosie. You must take my judgment on things you don't understand. I don't expect any help from my uncle, and I won't ask him for help."
Rosamond sat perfectly still.
"We'll have to return some of the silver to the shop where we bought it,"
said Lydgate.
"I hope that we will not have to sell the furniture and the house, but that too may happen if we are not careful." Come, darling, try not to worry. We can solve these problems.
Ever since Raffles had told him the name of Sarah Dunkirk's husband, Mr. Bulstrode had been wondering what he should do. For days he thought about Raffles and about the sins in his own past. Finally he wrote a letter to Will Ladislaw asking him to come to the Shrubs that evening. Will was not surprised to receive this invitation. He assumed Bulstrode wanted to talk about some business to do with the election.
I invited you here, Mr. Ladislaw,
began Bulstrode,
to discuss a very private matter. I have a confession to make to you. I make it only because I will be judged by God. Human law cannot touch me.
Ladislaw had always been sensitive on the question of the honour of his family. He was now afraid of what Bulstrode might tell him.
Is it true that your mother's name was Sarah Dunkirk, and that she ran away from her family to become an actress?
Yes,
replied Will.
Do you know anything about your mother's family?
No.
Sarah Dunkirk's mother became my wife,
said Bulstrode.
She was rich, and when she died she left all her money to me, because she couldn't find her daughter. Is your mother still alive?
No,
said Will, standing up as if to leave. He felt suddenly angry. He did not want to have any connection with this man.
Please sit down, Mr. Ladislaw,
said Bulstrode anxiously.
I wish to compensate you, to give you the inheritance your mother never received. I am not obliged to do this by law. I am doing it merely as an act of conscience.
Did you know where to find my mother?
Said Will. Bulstrode turned pale. He'd not expected his generous offer to be met in this way.
Yes, I did. But now I'm penitent, and wish to do the right thing before God. I assume that you will accept my offer, Mr. Ladislaw?
Will looked at him angrily.
Before I reply, I want to know what my grandmother's business was, and why my mother ran away from home.
It was a shop,
said Bulstrode nervously.
A pawnbroker's shop. Sarah thought that it was a dishonourable business. That's why she ran away from home.
She was right,
cried Will.
It is a dishonourable business.
Bulstrode blushed with anger. He had been prepared for humiliation, but this was too much. This young man, who he had hoped to help, was acting like a judge.
My honour is important to me,
said Will.
And now I find that there is dishonour in my family. My mother ran away from it, and so will I. I refuse your offer. Good night, sir.
As the weeks passed, Lydgate's money worries got worse, and the possibility of being forced to sell the house and the furniture grew more and more likely. Poor Rosamond had found marriage very disappointing. Before they were married, she had seen Lydgate as a romantic stranger. She had thought,
if I marry him, he'll make my life delightful.
But in fact, married life was not delightful. It was full of everyday details that were not what she had wished and hoped. His scientific studies seemed to her a sinister vampire's occupation. She felt that her husband had managed things badly, and she thought that her own judgment was superior to his. Until he'd left the neighbourhood 4 months before, Ladislaw's company had been pleasant and exciting for her. But now he was gone. Rosamond felt bored without him. She dreamed of an invitation to Sir Godwin Lydgate's house. She dreamed of a life in London with no money worries. Finally she decided to take action. Without telling her husband, she wrote a letter to Sir Godwin, explaining their troubles and asking for help. A week later, Lydgate came into the drawing-room with a letter in his hand. His face was pale with anger.
I can't live with you if you're always doing things I ask you not to do,
he cried, handing her the letter. Rosamond, too, changed colour as she read. Dear Tertius, don't get your wife to write to me when you want something. I thought you had more dignity than that. I cannot give you £1,000, or even half that sum. My own family uses up all my money. I've always wished you well, but now you must consider yourself completely independent from me. Your affectionate uncle, Godwin Lydgate.
This is not the first time this has happened, Rosamond.
said Lydgate angrily.
Time and time again I have expressed a wish, you have seemed to accept my wish, and then you have secretly disobeyed me.
Rosamond sat in silence, waiting for his anger to pass. No argument could persuade her that she had done something wrong. In her own view, she was the innocent victim of unpleasant circumstances. Lydgate thought of their future together.
She will stop loving me,
he thought.
How sad our life together will be then.
Finally she looked at him with tears in her eyes.
I only tried to help,
she said gently.
It's very hard to be disgraced here among all the people we know, and to live in such a miserable way. I wish I had died with the baby.
Her gentle tears and words touched Lydgate's heart. He put his arm around her.
It is much more difficult for her than it is for me,
he thought.
She has no life outside the home, as I have.
He wished to excuse her everything if he could, but to excuse her was also to think of her as another and weaker species. Nevertheless, she had mastered him. Will's departure for Middlemarch had been delayed, but now, after his meeting with Bulstrode, he finally prepared to leave. Then he remembered that he had left some of his sketches at Tipton Grange. He rode out to get them on his last day in Middlemarch. That morning, Dorothea went to Freshitt Hall to see Celia and Sir James. Mrs. Cadwallader was there too, repeating all the gossip she had heard in Middlemarch.
Everyone is talking about Mr. Ladislaw,
she said.
He spends all his time singing with Mrs. Lydgate while her husband is at work.
That is not true,
cried Dorothea.
Or at least, it is a misrepresentation. I do not want to hear people speaking evil of Mr. Ladislaw. He has already suffered too much injustice.
As she spoke, she blushed deeply, and her lips began to tremble. Then, calming herself, she stood up.
Anyway,
she said,
I must leave now. I'm going to Tipton Grange. Goodbye.
As she drove along in the carriage, the world seemed suddenly ugly and horrible. Her eyes filled with tears.
It's not true,
she cried, although she could not forget the day she had found Will with Mrs. Lydgate and heard his voice accompanied by the piano. When she got to Tipton Grange, the servant told her that her uncle was out, but Mr. Ladislaw was in the library. Dorothea entered the library, shook his hand, and sat down.
I'm very glad to see you,
she said.
I thought you had left Middlemarch weeks ago.
Her voice trembled a little.
After our last meeting, I discovered things that have changed my plans for the future,
said Will.
When I last saw you, I thought I might come back someday. But now, I don't think I ever shall.
Did you want to tell me the reasons?
She asked timidly.
Yes,
Will replied.
Since I said goodbye to you, I found out about Mr. Casaubon's will. It's a terrible insult. I'm not a fortune hunter. There was no need to protect you from me. The fact you were rich was protection enough.
I know,
said Dorothea. He walked to the window. She rose and came up to him there, but he turned and walked to another part of the room. Dorothea was hurt by this. He seemed no longer to like and trust her, as he had always done in the past.
I must go,
he said.
I must go and live somewhere else without happiness or hope. What I care for more than anything else is forbidden to me. I don't just mean forbidden to me by others. I mean forbidden to me by my own pride and honour. I'll go on living like a man who has seen heaven in a dream.
Dorothea could not be sure that he was talking about his relation with her. Perhaps he was talking about his relation with Mrs. Lydgate. Perhaps he was confiding in her as a friend. Will was not surprised by her silence. He longed for an assurance that she loved him, but he knew she could not say so, even if it were true. They shook hands, and he walked towards the door.
Please remember me,
said Dorothea with a sob in her voice.
Why do you say that?
Asked Will, irritated.
I'm in danger of forgetting everything else.
And he walked out of the room. Dorothea sat down. Her heart was beating fast. He loved her. Now she knew it for certain. She was filled with joy. At that moment it was easier to say goodbye. The knowledge of loving and being loved made her forget her sadness and feel strong. Chapter 7. A Temptation. Lydgate's only hope was to get a loan from Bulstrode. He did not want to do this because he disliked the banker and knew that most people in Middlemarch disliked him. Until now, he had considered himself totally independent of Bulstrode. His work at the new hospital had been done because Lydgate himself was interested in charity and public health. But with these terrible debts, he could no longer be independent. Bulstrode asked Lydgate to come to his office at the bank to discuss the new hospital.
"I am no longer young, Mr. Lydgate, and my health is not good,"
said the banker.
"So I'm going to retire from some of my business interests. I'll move away from Middlemarch to a place by the sea. It'll be better for my health. I'll also retire from the management of the new hospital. I've talked to Mrs. Casaubon, and she says that she might take over my part in the financing of the hospital." "I'm sorry to hear that you're leaving the hospital,"
said Lydgate.
"You know that the other Middlemarch doctors disagree with my methods. With your support, I was able to treat fevers as I thought they should be treated. That is especially important, now that we have a case of cholera in town." "Nevertheless, I can't give any further financial help to the hospital,"
said Bulstrode. Lydgate thought that Bulstrode must have money problems of his own, but asking the banker for a loan was his last hope, and so he explained about all his debts and asked for a loan of £1,000. Bulstrode said that he could not help. He advised Lydgate to go bankrupt. Lydgate felt that the banker had no human sympathy, but in fact Mr. Bulstrode was too preoccupied with his own worries to help anyone else. In the past few months, Raffles had come back to Middlemarch several times. Each time, Raffles went into Middlemarch and got drunk in the public houses. Bulstrode was afraid that Raffles might tell his secrets in town, so he gave the man money to go away. The day before, Raffles had come back to the Shrubs. He was ill. Mr. Bulstrode put him to bed in his own bedroom. He told his wife that he was taking care of a miserable creature, the victim of vice, as an act of Christian charity. The fever had made Raffles delirious. He was speaking plainly about those facts in the past that Bulstrode wanted to keep secret. Bulstrode was afraid that someone might hear, so he sat by the sick man's bed and allowed no one else to enter the room. He sat up all night praying. When Bulstrode returned from the bank after his conversation with Lydgate, Raffles was worse. Illness had changed him. Instead of being loud and sarcastic, he was now timid and frightened. Bulstrode sent a note to Lydgate, asking him to come to the Shrubs. Sitting by the bed, waiting for Lydgate, Bulstrode thought that perhaps God intended to save him from disgrace and humiliation, after all. Raffles might die. Bulstrode prayed.
"Thy will be done."
When Lydgate arrived, Bulstrode spoke to him outside the room.
"I've asked you to come, Mr. Lydgate, because an unfortunate man is here and is seriously ill. His name is John Raffles. He worked for me many years ago. I feel it's my duty to help him."
When he had thoroughly examined the patient, Lydgate spoke to Bulstrode in private again.
"He must stay in bed. Someone should watch him all the time." "I'll watch him." "Have you no servant who could do it?" "Yes, I have Mr. and Mrs. Abel, but they are inexperienced. I'll watch the patient, and they can help me if necessary." "All right. Then I'll give my instructions to you," said Lydgate. "Don't give him any alcoholic drinks. He'll ask for them, but you must refuse him." "Is it serious?"
asked Bulstrode.
"I'm not sure. He was a strong, healthy man before he fell ill. If you follow my instructions, he should get better in a few days. On the other hand, he might get worse. We'll have to wait and see. I'll come again tomorrow morning."
As Lydgate rode away, he thought about the treatment of cases of alcoholic poisoning such as this. Most doctors in Britain at the time believed that patients with this illness should be allowed to drink alcohol and be given large doses of opium. Lydgate was completely against this treatment. Whenever he had treated cases of alcoholic poisoning in the past, he had forbidden alcohol and opium, and his patients had got better. Lydgate did not wonder why Bulstrode was taking care of Raffles. He supposed that the sick man was the object of Bulstrode's Christian charity.
I wish he had the same feelings of Christian charity for me,
he thought. He was on his way home to tell Rosamond that his last hope of paying the debts was gone. She had told him that if the furniture had to be sold, she would go back to her father's house. As he rode along, Lydgate thought how different these troubles would be if he had a loving companion to share them. Bulstrode sat by the sick man's bed, deep in thought. He wanted Raffles to die, but he intended to do nothing to cause that death. He intended to follow Lydgate's instructions exactly. Now he deeply regretted having refused to give Lydgate a loan that morning. If he had given Lydgate the loan, Lydgate would have felt obligated to him. What if Raffles spoke deliriously while Lydgate was there? The next day, Lydgate came at noon. Bulstrode noticed that the doctor looked pale and tired. Raffles was worse. He had refused to eat, and he had not slept. He had been awake, feverish and delirious all night.
I think we should give him a little opium. Very little, just to make him sleep,
said Lydgate.
Give him 3 drops of opium every half hour for 2 hours, then stop. It is very important that you stop after 2 hours. Don't let him drink anything alcoholic, and make sure the dose of opium is exactly as I told you. You yourself are looking ill, Mr. Lydgate,
said Bulstrode.
I told you of my troubles yesterday,
said Lydgate coldly.
Yes. I've thought about your situation, and I've decided to help you. I think you said you need £1,000. If you wait a moment, I'll write you a cheque for that amount. Thank you, Mr. Bulstrode,
said Lydgate, suddenly full of joy and relief. As he rode home to tell Rosamond the good news, he did not wonder why Bulstrode had changed his mind. At 6 o'clock, Bulstrode gave Raffles the first dose of opium, following Lydgate's instructions exactly. Half an hour later, he called Mrs. Abel.
Will you please sit with the patient tonight, Mrs. Abel? I'm very tired. I must sleep.
Certainly, sir,
said Mrs. Abel.
What should I give him?
Give him 3 drops of opium every half hour. Give him soup or water if he asks for it. If you need any help, call your husband.
Mr. Bulstrode went downstairs. He was not worried that Raffles might talk in Mrs. Abel's presence. The opium had made his speech incoherent. He sat in the drawing-room for a long time, thinking about Raffles. Suddenly he realized that he had not told Mrs. Abel when to stop giving the opium to Raffles. He went upstairs thinking,
perhaps she was already giving him too much. I'm tired. It's not surprising that I forgot part of Lydgate's instructions. Should I go to my own room, or should I tell Mrs. Abel when to stop giving him the opium?
He paused in the corridor by the door to the room. He could hear the sick man talking incoherently.
Perhaps,
thought Bulstrode,
Lydgate is wrong. Perhaps more opium will help Raffles.
Mr. Bulstrode went into his own bedroom. A few minutes later, Mrs. Abel knocked on Mr. Bulstrode's bedroom door.
Excuse me, sir. Should I give the poor man some cognac? He says that nothing else will save him. He says he'll die without it. And I remember, sir, that when my master, Mr. Robinson, was ill, the doctor said to give him cognac all the time.
Mr. Bulstrode did not answer immediately. Then he gave Mrs. Abel a key and said,
There is plenty of cognac downstairs in the wine cellar.
The next morning, when Lydgate arrived, Raffles was clearly dying. Lydgate was disturbed about the case. Had Bulstrode followed his instructions exactly? Lydgate did not want to ask Bulstrode that question. It seemed like an insult. And Bulstrode was Lydgate's benefactor. An hour later, Raffles died.
Well,
thought Lydgate,
the man is dead. There is no point in implying that it was someone's fault. After all, my instructions might have been wrong.
5 days after the death of Raffles, 3 Middlemarch men, Mr. Bambridge, Mr. Hawley, and Mr. Hopkins, were standing outside their favourite public house when Mr. Bulstrode walked by.
That reminds me,
said Mr. Bambridge.
When I was in the village of Bilkley last Wednesday, I heard an interesting story about Bulstrode. Do you know how he got his money? He married an old woman when he was young. He let her think that her daughter and grandchild were dead, even though he knew they were alive. Then, when the old woman died, he got all their money.
Who told you that?
Asked Mr. Hawley.
A drunken old man in a public house at Bilkley,
said Mr. Bambridge.
What was his name?
Asked Mr. Hawley.
Raffles.
Raffles?
Cried Mr. Hopkins, the undertaker.
I did his funeral yesterday. Bulstrode was there. His servant told me that Raffles died in Bulstrode's house. Did any doctor see him?
Asked Mr. Hawley.
Yes, Lydgate,
said Mr. Hopkins. Other men, hearing that the conversation was interesting, joined the group to listen to the gossip.
Lydgate and Bulstrode have always been close,
said Mr. Bambridge.
I don't like Lydgate, and I don't trust his methods,
said Mr. Hopkins.
Our doctor, Dr. Spragg, says that these modern methods are dangerous, and especially now that there's cholera in the town. We need doctors we can trust.
I heard there's going to be a town meeting to discuss the cholera,
said Mr. Bambridge.
Are you going?
Certainly,
said Mr. Hopkins.
All the men in town will want to be there to discuss how we can prevent the cholera from spreading. Do you know that Lydgate has paid all his debts?
Said Mr. Hawley suddenly.
I heard it yesterday. They were going to take all his furniture, but at the last moment he found the money. Yes,
said Mr. Hopkins.
I heard that. My brother works in the bank. He said that Mr. Bulstrode gave Lydgate a loan.
That sounds bad,
said Mr. Bambridge.
Perhaps Bulstrode gave Lydgate the money to keep quiet about the death of this fellow Raffles.
All the men listening agreed that this was probably true, and from there the gossip spread through Middlemarch like fire. The next day was a town meeting to discuss the cholera. All the men of Middlemarch were there. When Bulstrode and Lydgate entered the meeting together, people stopped talking and looked at them. The meeting began, and Mr. Bulstrode asked if he could speak on the subject of a new cemetery. The chairman said yes, but just then Mr. Hawley rose and said,
Before anyone speaks about the cemetery, I would like to speak about another subject, which I and many of the people of Middlemarch consider very important.
Mr. Bulstrode sat down, and Mr. Hawley continued.
Many of us in Middlemarch think that Mr. Bulstrode should resign from the public positions he holds. There are certain actions which, though not illegal, are as immoral as many illegal actions. I ask Mr. Bulstrode to deny, if he can, the scandalous statements made by a man now dead who died in his house. That man, known as John Raffles, claimed that Mr. Bulstrode got his money dishonestly.
Everyone in the room looked at Mr. Bulstrode, who had turned very pale. For many years Mr. Bulstrode had been a powerful person in Middlemarch. He had often criticised other people for their sinful ways. He had acted as though he himself were the perfect example of Christian virtue. Now he was being publicly humiliated. God had not, after all, decided to spare him. God had abandoned him and left him exposed to these rough men who hated him and took pleasure in his humiliation. Lydgate heard the accusations with alarm, but as a doctor he was even more alarmed by Bulstrode's pale face and trembling hands. The banker stood up to speak.
The people who are attacking me are doing so not because they want justice, but because they hate me. They have always hated me because I criticised them for their sinful lives. They spent all their money on sin, while I spent mine on charitable works.
Many voices were raised in disapproval of Bulstrode's speech, but one was louder than the rest.
If you mean me, sir,
cried Mr. Hawley,
I never pretended to be a saint as you do. Again, I ask you to explain or deny the accusations made against you.
The chairman turned to Bulstrode and said,
I think that because Mr. Hawley and his friends have asked it, you should offer an explanation of the things of which you have been accused. If you wish, I will listen to your explanation later today, in private.
Now, I must ask you to leave, so that we can continue the meeting.
After a moment's hesitation, Bulstrode took his hat from the floor and slowly rose, but he seemed about to fall. Lydgate felt sure that the banker was not strong enough to walk out on his own. What could he do? He stood up, took Bulstrode's arm, and helped him out of the room. It was an act of compassion that he did naturally, as a man and as a doctor. But he knew that those present saw him as Bulstrode's friend and ally. He knew that by helping Bulstrode at that moment, he was separating himself from the other men in the room. Poor Lydgate could now see exactly what the other men of Middlemarch thought of him. They thought that he had taken a bribe to keep silent about the death of Raffles.